tea and find your seats. I have one announcement. Next week we have a person from off campus, Kat Blake. Title of the talk is Dead Men Do Tell Tales. And it says you'll learn what forensic anthropologists, bioarchaeologists can learn from human skeletal remains. Indeed, that should promise to be very interesting. Today, I'm happy to welcome Kate Dimitrova, who's going to talk about her work in her sabbatical leave. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Welcome, Kate.
Thanks. All right. Welcome, everyone. This is my third Bergren Forum that I've attended. I can only attend the ones that I give. This is over 2 classes of mine, so it's unfortunate that I don't get to go to the other Bergren Forums, but thank you for coming. And today, my goal is to give you an exposure of what I did last year. I took a 1-year sabbatical for the 2017-2018 year, and I'm going to show you some pictures, a lot of pictures, and give you a sense. It's a very personal talk. I'll touch upon my research briefly, but really this is to expose you to what I did in my life. So one of the first things I did, I realized probably in July of last year, July of 2017, was that I needed to be very clear on what I was going to do with my sabbatical year. We get a sabbatical every 7 years. You can either take a 1 semester or a full year, and I chose the full year in part to take care of my mom who's sick. When I got to San Diego, my hometown, I sat down and I decided to do what are called sabbatical intentions. I just came up with this idea on my own. I had read a mindfulness magazine that summer, and I came up with, this is not mine, I read in the magazine this idea of having intent or intentions. And the magazine outlined this idea of incubating, noticing things around you, trusting the process, expressing yourself, nurturing yourself, and also taking action. And so this was the driving force of me making sabbatical goals or intentions, was based on this idea of intent. And I'm not giving you specifics. I'm happy to answer questions what they were specifically, but I came up with 4 general sabbatical intentions. And within those 4 areas, I had several goals. The first was new adventures. I wanted to do new things. It has been 10 years since I got my PhD. And that's been 10 years that I've not been in the classroom really as a student. I did go to Morocco in 2013 as a faculty member, and that was fabulous. I love to learn. And so I miss learning as a student. And so one of the things I wanted to do was do new things. I wanted to take cooking classes. I thought about taking a voice class, which I ended up actually not doing. So some of the new adventures ended up getting fulfilled and some did not. My second intent was to thrive physically and spiritually. A couple years ago, went on to Weight Watchers. I lost a lot of weight. I lost about 40 pounds. I've managed to keep the weight off. It's not easy, being committed to a healthy diet. I love sugar, as some of my colleagues know. But I wanted to maintain a healthy lifestyle, and that really included exercising every single day. It's been hard the last few weeks because I have a new member of my family who's preventing me from getting my daily exercise, but I did fulfill this goal. Except for when I was sick 1 week, I exercised every single day. That was either walking or swimming, essentially. And then spiritually, my goal was to meditate every day. This has grounded me, and I feel my level of stress in dealing with coming back to school has been greatly rewarded by becoming someone who meditates daily. I grew up in a family of meditators. My mom has always meditated. When I was a kid, I thought it was really stupid. But then as an adult, I've realized that, hey, this is not that stupid. I had academic and career goals. I had endeavors to go to a conference. I ended up doing a conference, and I was also invited to give a lecture in Paris at the American University of Paris. I also had goals such as write a book review. I wanted to finish my article, which I felt a little short of doing. And so career and academic goals were along those lines. I also spent time working on my pedagogy, how I teach, always wanting to become a better teacher that I strive to be. And number 4 is probably one of the most important things that I did. I actually journaled and I recorded what I did every single day. So I can show you my calendar from last year, and every single day I filled out. I did this in part, again, with intent and intention to mark what I had done every day. I recorded what I made for dinner. I recorded where my father and I went to lunch. I recorded really everything. If I meditated, I recorded what kind of video I watched with my mom, all types of stuff. And so I think this was important to make sure that at the end of my sabbatical, I felt that it hadn't just gone away, it didn't disappear into the ether, that I had a very intentional sabbatical, and I did. I had an absolutely phenomenal year away to get some ideas in space. I show you this. This is a photograph of San Francisco Airport. My sister lives in San Francisco, and so I fly up there. When I'm in San Diego, I fly up there twice a year or so to visit her. This is a Hans Christian Andersen quote that they have painted in one of the lounges. You can't read it all, I'm sure, so I'm going to read it to you. It says, "To move, to breathe, to fly, to float, to gain all while you give, to roam the roads of lands remote, to travel is to live." And one of the things I tell my students is, you may forget the names of artists or the dates of artists, but if I instill one thing in my students, it's to travel the world and explore the world. I love to travel. It is in my blood. Most of my sabbatical when I wasn't tied down in San Diego was traveling. And so that is my goal today. I'm going to take you on a little traveling expedition of where I went and explore it. So I thought I'd start off with my life in San Diego. How many have been to San Diego? Anybody? A couple people? Wow, an impressive amount of people. Okay, so this may look familiar to you. These are the shores of La Jolla. We do not live near La Jolla. We live inland. We live nowhere near the beach. But one of the first things my dad always does, he picks me up at the airport and he always takes me to the ocean. Seeing the Pacific Ocean is a healing thing for me. I miss the ocean immensely. This is my father. You can see an aircraft carrier behind us. For those of you who don't know, San Diego is a major military town. Navy is based there, and Marines as well. So you see a huge aircraft carrier behind us, and that is my father and I. I went to care for my mother who has dementia. She's at the advanced stages of dementia from having several strokes over the last 5 years or so. My father's her primary caregiver, so my goal for my sabbatical was to take care of him as he took care of her. I'm his only child, so one of the things that my father and I did throughout my sabbatical was we ate a lot. And I just said to you how I'm trying to maintain my weight. So this was a really interesting challenge. My father loves to eat. I'm going to give you just a few pictures of some phenomenal foods that we ate over the course of our year. This is a lovely olive spread. You can see here, oh, doesn't that look great? A cheese board with pears, a phenomenal tomato soup, chunky tomato soup. Am I making you hungry yet? I love asparagus and I love artichoke, and so beautiful artichoke hearts, and look at the salad. Isn't this phenomenal? So a lot of my sabbatical was spent eating. We have a caregiver who comes in every day, and basically every day, 6 days a week, my father wants to go out to lunch. So going out to eat 6 days a week is incredibly challenging if you're trying to maintain a healthy diet. So you can see I tried. I also spent a lot of time at home cooking. Many of you know, who know me personally know that I love to cook. Here in Alfred, I've been forced to become a cook because there's not a lot of places to eat in Alfred. So I really spent a lot of time on focusing on my cooking and becoming a better chef, and boy, my father misses me right now, I'll tell you. I asked him the other night, how are you doing eating-wise? He's like, I definitely am not eating as well with you not being here. So this is one meal I made of sweet potato, kind of a mash with some sausage. A friend of mine has a kale tree, and I don't know if Corey Fecteau is here, but I thank Corey for getting me into not just kale, but raw kale salad. So we ate a lot of kale. So good for you. Tons of food, as you can see. So these are all my homegrown fixins and feeding ourselves well. One of the things I decided to do was to take some cooking classes. And we do not have Sur la Table anywhere near us. I think the closest one is in Cleveland. It's the equivalent of Williams-Sonoma. They have kind of a French spin, but in San Diego for $50 you can take a cooking class, hands-on cooking class. And so the first one I took was a croissant making class. And my father said, why do you want to learn how to make croissants? We can go to the French bakery and buy them. And I said, no. Have I made a croissant since? Absolutely not. They're hard to make. They're a lot of work. That crispy, flaky quality you get by folding and folding and folding. In France, you fold at least 15 times and roll out and fold again and roll out. It takes a long time to make croissants, I learned. So my understanding and respect for croissants has greatly increased. We had these cool mix masters that we use. My father calls them a mix master, KitchenAid mixer. I learned about Kerrygold. Do you guys know about Kerrygold? I never used Kerrygold until I went to the Sir Luke Todd cooking class, and they said, this is the only butter to buy. And so I'm telling you all, so you don't have to go to a cooking class to learn, buy Kerrygold. Yes, it's higher in calories, it's higher in fat, and it is so deep and yellow, it will make any other butter look gross to you. They sell it at Wegmans in the specialty cheese section, just so you know. This is what I ended up producing. We made sweet rolls, like cinnamon rolls, and we made different types of croissants, all phenomenal and fatty and yummy and good. This is a one pot or an Instant Pot. How many guys know about this? There's some people know about it. All right, well, I somehow conned my colleague, Hope Childers, and her husband to buy one before I bought one. And they bought it, they loved it, and so when I was in San Diego, I decided to take a cooking class, how to use a one pot or an Instant Pot. And I think it's an absolute phenomenal kitchen tool. You can get rid of several kitchen tools and replace this one for $99. You can braise in it, cook in it, do amazing things. Short ribs. Absolutely, you got to try Hope. You got to try the short ribs. Absolutely phenomenal. So this is what it looks like in the end. Am I making you hungry? Oh, good, good. So my family lives on a little bit over an acre in the eastern part of San Diego County, and so that means we have a lot of citrus trees. And I love lemons. I love anything lemon-oriented. And on my sabbatical, I went lemon crazy. I went out and picked lemons. We have a Meyer lemon tree, which is a special kind of lemon. It's mixed with an orange. It's a little sweeter, has a thinner skin, softer skin. And I went crazy. I started learning all types of things. So I learned how to preserve lemons. I love Moroccan food. And I've always had to buy, like on Amazon, preserved lemons. Now I've been making them. I gave them away as gifts, which people just loved. So great Christmas present from last year. And I also learned how to make the ugliest sounding name. It's called lemon curd. It should be called lemon butter. It really is butter and lemon and sugar mixed together. But I made lemon curd as well and put it on anything. Just phenomenal. So one of the commitments I made was exercising every day. One of the hardest things I absolutely did during my sabbatical was I decided to join the U.S. Masters swim team. I had swam with U.S. Masters when I was in college. I swam in college, my first year of college. My freshman year, I was the rookie on the swim team, and it was hard then. I swam with U.S. Masters. They typically start swimming at 5:30 in the morning, Monday through Friday, 5:30 to 7. I realized I could not do that this year. So I found a master swim team that met at noon, 2 days a week, and I joined the U.S. Master Swim Team. And I have to tell you, it was really one of the absolute hardest things I did. The workouts are brutal. We often swim around 2,000 yards a day, so that's a little over a mile. Intense. Learned a lot. On the far right of the picture is my coach. That was Joni. The two people in the center, the man and the woman, they are both triathletes, hardcore triathletes. There I am, and then on the other end is my friend here, Rose. They were my support team. I went to swim twice a week. It was time for me to spend away from the situation at home and also really work on my body and my mind and let things go. I thought I'd show you a few pictures of San Diego, my favorite parts of San Diego. This is called Adams Avenue. It's where all the cool restaurants are. I saw this wonderful bike out, and on the bike seat, in response to MAGA, was this sticker, Make America Green Again. And that's something I spent a lot of time doing when I was in San Diego. I spent a lot of time at greeneries and nurseries and in the garden with my father. It's one of my favorite things to do. I did it as a child and continue to do it. So that gives you a little bit of insight into my life, my personal life in San Diego. I now turn to introduce to something that probably many of you don't even know I'm involved with. It's called the Hansen Summer Institute. It is a program that is run at the University of San Diego. That is the Catholic school in San Diego. My father's the trustee for this institute. A man in the 1970s decided to leave all his money. He had no children. He left all his money to this institute. And the institute's goal is devoted to peace, peace studies of any kind. And so over the years, we've funded different programs. We funded a program for about a decade called the Women Peacemakers. They were actually nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize several years ago. But But we decided that the program we like the most is this program. It's called the Summer Institute on Leadership and International Cooperation. I'm showing you a photograph of this year's program. We run it every summer for 3 weeks in the month of July. So I'm never here for Mozart's. I've never been here for Mozart's because I'm always trying to get home for the Summer Hansen Institute. We basically bring about 15 to 20 international students from around the world, conflict countries, essentially, and we bring 5 Americans, and we want the Americans to get exposed to international relations and issues. I put on the screen for you the list of countries for this year, for 2018. We had a student, Mohammed, from Egypt. We had a student from Ghana, a woman from Saudi Arabia, Uzbekistan, the Slovak Republic, the Gambia, Malaysia, Brazil, the Ukraine, Armenia, Myanmar, Burma, Belarus, Bulgaria, Rwanda, Kyrgyzstan, Australia, our Australian, he is right here, a Vietnamese immigrant, actually, India, Pakistan, and Russia. What we do is we often room together students that are from warring countries. So if we have an Israeli, guess what? They get roomed with the Palestinian. The Georgian gets roomed with the Russian. Just to give you an idea, here is a photo of our students. This program is so near and dear to my heart. I love my teaching job here. I feel it's important to expose students to the history of art. And then during the summer, I go and get exposed to these students. They're all between the ages of 20 and 24, I think, is our cutoff. They have to be absolutely fluent in English. So that does mean that they are coming from a higher income class because they have exposure to English, especially if they're coming from someplace like Ghana or Rwanda. They come to this country having done amazing things. Some of these students at 18, 19 years old have started NGOs. Our student from Brazil, I don't see him in the picture immediately, this year came up with an app that tried to reduce the time that when someone calls 911 in Brazil, the wait time is often very long, so it crowdsources people. It sends out a message that in this neighborhood someone's called 911 and nurses or doctors can respond and get onto the scene quicker. So we have students who are doing really amazing things. We've had students who've been involved with their constitution and making constitutional changes. I feel so incredibly humbled by these students. So every year we bring them to San Diego for 3 weeks. They learn cooperation studies, skills, basically, you know, we teach them leadership skills, how to speak in public. We do 2 full days with them on how to get in front of a lecture and talk to people. We also have days where they learn about conflict mediation and how to solve problems between countries. USD has a special school called the School of Peace Studies that was paid for by Joan Kroc, who is was the widow of McDonald's. So the hamburgers have paid for a peace school, and one of the rooms that they built was a conflict mediation room. So it is a room where you bring people to mediate between. You can separate the sides, you meet in between. So we do all types of things with them. They also learn about United States government, local government, and then we also have them do a social project. So for example, the guy from Brazil, his app was funded to take that skill back and take it back to his home country. So the Hansen Institute continues on, and I'm still involved with the project every year. I help my father look at the program. We try to make changes and improve it every year. One thing I wanted to show you quickly, this is especially towards my students. I had a little mini college reunion with my art history buddies. There are 3 of us who've stayed in contact for the last 22 years since we graduated from UCSD in 1996. Here the 3 of us are. My friend Damon is in the center. He works at a consignment store, a high-end jewelry store in Manhattan, and my friend Yoli is a charter school teacher. So all 3 of us, to some degree, are still involved with the arts with our BA degrees in art history, good critical thinking skills degree. When they came, of course, I lured them by promising to make them something really yummy, and I made them a pavlova. I had never made a pavlova before. It was so easy. Just turned out great. It's basically a bed of meringue with whipped cream and then any fruit you want on top. This was in June, so peak of strawberry season for us. So I'm turning now to show you my trip to the eclipse. As you noticed in my title, this was the year of eclipses. There were 2 eclipses that happened during my sabbatical year. I felt incredibly lucky that I was able to go see them both. One was a solar-lunar eclipse, a total solar-lunar eclipse, solar eclipse, I'm sorry, and then also a lunar eclipse I saw in January. I'm getting confused which of my dates. So I went to a couple places. I'm just going to show you a picture or 2 from each place. I got to Portland. I've been to Portland a few times. It's a great city, of course. Ben & Jerry's is there, a must stop by. But the person I was visiting is this person. This is my best friend from grad school. We met in 1998, so we met 20 years ago. And we've never lived in the same place for more than 1 year, but we've managed to maintain this crazy bi-coastal relationship. We absolutely are committed to trying to see each other once a year. We've gone 3-4 years without seeing each other, but I did see her twice over my sabbatical year. And one of the places she took me to, it's not labeled on the map, but she took me to Port Townsend. It's up in Washington. I guess I have someone, Zane, is excited about Port Townsend. I'd never been to Port Townsend before. Absolutely stunning geography. I'd been to Seattle. I'd been to Victoria. Gloomy when I first got there, absolute beautiful, amazing wildflowers. This is the region, Pacific Northwest, where people are sailing and doing phenomenal ocean and seaside events. One of the things we did was we walked. We spent a lot of time talking and chatting and talking about spirituality and our lives and, well, you know, kind of reassessing as we're in our mid-40s, you know, where we've been and where are we going. But beautiful scenery, wind-swept shores, and just stunning. Of course, we ate. We walked a lot, so you know, this is one of the cinnamon rolls, absolutely phenomenal. I do not eat things like this. They're kind of banned from my current way of eating, but I did have an amazing cinnamon roll with her, and one of the fun things we did was we went to one of these kind of adult cinemas, but I don't mean adult meaning anything pornographic. This is where they serve wine and alcohol. So this is the little cinema where all these couches and chandeliers are just brought together, and we had our drink, and we saw some crazy film. I can't even tell you the title, but it was a really raunchy, wacky film based in the Middle Ages. We howled the whole time. We were both trained as medievalists. Nobody else was laughing like we were. I'm sure we annoyed a lot of people at the movie theater. We then hopped on the huge, huge ship that takes you across over to Seattle. And I joke with anyone that I meet from Seattle. I've been to Seattle 2 times, and both times I've been there look like this. I've never been to Seattle when it was rainy and cold and miserable, and I know it is rainy and cold and miserable, but both of my trips to Seattle have been phenomenal, beautiful trips. It's a great city. If you've not been, make sure you go and take the underground tour. Seattle burned to the ground, and you can take a whole tour of the underground city that was built above it, something that a lot of people don't know about. Best part of Seattle is the underground part. One of the things we did when we got back to Oregon, to Aaron's family, and my goddaughter, who is seen here, this is my goddaughter, Olive, we went blackberry picking. You can do that in Oregon. You can wander around and pick beautiful blackberries, and we hadn't planned on doing this. We were out playing with a Frisbee. So the Frisbee ended up being our carrier of berries. So we got home, and we were able then to make a beautiful cobbler later that evening. We were so, so excited about the eclipse. This shows you the path of the eclipse. I will tell you right now, there's not going to be another eclipse that goes across the United States from coast to coast until 2045. So when I heard about the eclipse and I realized I'd be on sabbatical, I jumped at the opportunity. I looked at the map and I thought, gosh, where is the eclipse going to be taking place? And it literally took place in my best friend's hometown. It was south of Portland, so I flew up and visited her. The path is about 70 miles wide. It's called the Path of Totality. So to see the eclipse in full totality, you have to be in the 70-mile wide path. If you're just north of it or south of it, you cannot look at the sun directly when the moon obscured, or when the earth obscures it. My friends, yeah, there I am. I'm wearing a really cool silkscreen shirt. A friend of ours in Oregon handmade shirts for all of us. So each one was a little different, and it says, "I walked the path of totality." And here I am with my goddaughter as we started the eclipse moment, wearing our very safety-approved glasses. We got super lucky. We sat down in a field where there was almost nobody. We were worried that there were going to be hordes and hordes of people. There weren't. We sat down, and a professor sat down next to us, and he had his whole little computer set up, and he had all his tripods and fancy equipment, and he was there to document the eclipse. So we could then go behind and look at his screen through his telephoto lens to see what was happening that we really couldn't see. So this is his computer. One of the things I learned, we made a little pinhole box, basically, so we could chart the eclipse, and you can see the little moon shape there. Tell me if you've ever heard of this. When you are experiencing an eclipse, before the eclipse actually happens, shadows all are in the form of little moons. I have someone who's saying yes, she knows this. Thanks, Beth. So these are people's hands, and I don't know if you guys can tell, but the shadows are in the form of little moons. I went around to see if I could really prove this. So a little empirical evidence here. And sure enough, that is a tree. That is the shadow of a tree being cast on a barn. And you can see all the little moon shadows that are being created by the leaves. It's something so phenomenal. I can't explain it. The light changes very quickly. You know, we sat down in about an hour and a half. The actual eclipse happened. It's as if 24 hours have been compressed into a 1-hour period. And so I'm going to show you a quick horrible video, but it will kind of give you a sense. Let's see if it will work. You don't need to hear the sound. The sound is not great. But this is during totality. And one of the things that happens is that you get basically sunrise, moonrise. You get a sunset all around you, sunrise, sunset phenomena. All the birds came out, started singing. Has anyone experienced a full solar eclipse? A couple people. They're really phenomenal. I mean, gives you a sense of, you know, it's not pitch dark, but it's dark. That's me talking. So we had about a minute and a half or so as, and I'm going to stop it here just to give you a sense of what it was like. You can't experience it unless you go on your own. So the next total solar eclipses are listed here. I have really good news for you guys, though. I had mentioned to you that 2045, Northern California to Florida is the next coast-to-coast eclipse. But you guys are very, very lucky. The question is, will the weather be lucky for us? This is what's going to happen. So on April 8th, April's kind of mixed here, right? Of 2024, the eclipse is going to go through Buffalo. Mark your calendars now. I sure hope we would get to experience this. Surely going down to Texas, you're going to have a much better chance of seeing it. I think it would be a real bummer to get out there and have the clouds come, but I did want to note, you know, this is really great. So Cleveland, it's going from Texas through Maine in 2024. So start praying to the moon and sun gods now that the eclipse is going to come through for you. After my eclipse experience, which was so phenomenal, I was so emotional during it, which was not anticipated. It was just such a phenomenal experience. I went up to San Francisco, or flew down to San Francisco to see my beloved sister. My sister is 18 years older than I. My mom had 5 children. She's number 1 and I'm number 5. And so I'm very close to my sister, and it is so hard for us to see each other between her 3 kids and my life here. But we did manage to go to the wine country. We went up to the Russian River Valley, so not Napa and not Sonoma, but the Russian River Valley. Of course, had some great food. If you ever go to a city called Healdsburg, go to Brava's Bar de Tapas. It is a Spanish restaurant. They import jamón ibérico from Spain, and they serve things like this, which is the tortilla española. Absolutely phenomenal. So I'm sure you're wondering, like, did I work at all? Yes, I did work. I went to a conference in October. I flew to Milwaukee. I'd never been to Milwaukee before in my life. This was my first night there. I took a view of the cityscape from my hotel room. And the next day I gave a talk, The Craft of Spectacle. And the talk was about the role of textiles in the court of Henry VIII. You probably all recognize these images of Henry VIII. This was by his court painter, Hans Holbein, a very famous painter in the English court. For my manuscript students who are still here, I thought I'd include a manuscript for you. So I'm teaching a manuscript class right now, and they're with us at this moment. A beautiful, huge manuscript that is illuminated, showing how textiles were actually used at the court of Henry Henry VIII. The image in the lower right-hand side is the Chapel of St. George. I gave this talk in October, so it was about 2-3 weeks later that Meghan and Harry of the monarchy in England announced they were getting married, and the announcement was made that they were getting married in the Chapel of St. George. And so this is actually a picture of the Chapel of St. George, and it shows the knights coming in. It was a group of a chivalric order, basically, that was popular during Henry VIII's time, that the Queen of England still is in charge of today. I threw in this image as well. This shows, hard to see, but it shows here Henry VIII, the king, on horseback. He's in a tilting tournament, basically, with another knight shown here. You can see Henry VIII's horse is covered in beautiful silks and regalia with the letter K. K is there for the letter for Catherine, his wife, Catherine of Aragon. This is his first wife, who he famously left, divorced for Anne Boleyn. But this is a beautiful scene of what life at court was like, and you can see there is some textiles behind the ladies who are watching the tournament take place. I want to credit Kat, my good colleague in foundations. She had lived in Wisconsin, and she said, "You have to go to Wolf Peach." I said, "Okay, I'll go to Wolf Peach." So I dragged all these colleagues that I did not know from the conference, and I said, "Look, a friend told me about Wolf Peach, this amazing restaurant, farm-to-table restaurant. We had, I have to tell you, one of the best meals I've had in a long time. If you're in Milwaukee, go to Wolf Peach. Totally worth it. Phenomenal food." There were 4 of us, and through the whole meal, I think we kept saying, oh my gosh, this is so amazing, every bite." Many of you guys know Milwaukee has this famous new art museum. It's not that new, but by Dimitrova, a famous architect who redesigned the Milwaukee Museum of Art. Absolutely phenomenal museum, great contemporary art. Not a lot of medieval art for me, but I saw this painting and I took a picture of it. I found this absolutely phenomenal. It's just kind of different. If I was to add it to one of my classes, it would get dumped in my Northern Renaissance class, basically. It's from about 1570. It's called a Triple Profile Portrait by a Southern Netherlandish artist named Lucas de Heer. We have 3 figures here. They look very effeminate from our lens from the 21st century. These are men. They are 3 men, 3 male figures. They're called the mignons. In French, they were the male favorites to the King of France at the time, Henry III. So fascinating portrait, definitely caught my eye, and I thought it was a phenomenal work of art. I flew back to California eventually and kept on swimming, kept on walking, kept on eating, and I decided to go to Los Angeles. I had lived in LA from 1999 till 2002, and I hadn't been to LA since. I kind of don't love LA. I lived in LA. I've done LA. LA is not the easiest town. This is one of my best friends. She was visiting from Madrid, Therese, and so we decided to go visit the Getty together, where I had spent about 3 years of my life. So this is called the Getty Center, the big museum on the hill. This is where I worked. This was the Research Institute. I spent 3 years there cataloging photographs of tapestry. Beautiful site. I just thought I'd throw up my study images. So I cataloged about 5,000 photographs of tapestry when I worked at the Getty. This was in between my master's and PhD. It was this experience that made me really realize that I'm a people person and I needed to be around people to survive. For those of you who've not been to the Getty Center, it's an absolute phenomenal cultural institute. It cost over $1 billion. B with a BB, not $1 million, but $1 billion to build. They needed so much Carrara marble that they bought a quarry in Italy. When you walk around the Getty, you will see fossils in the marble throughout. So you'll see leaves, you'll see snails, all types of things. It's an absolute phenomenal place. It is really the United States ode to culture, in addition to the Metropolitan Museum of Art and, of course, MoMA and the Guggenheim. Of course, there's others as well. But on the West Coast, this is the museum you go see. So the Getty Center. In addition, I went to LACMA, the LA County Museum of Art, and I saw one of the most phenomenal shows I've seen in my entire life. This is a Marc Chagall show. It was about his designs for the opera. They had his watercolors in the show showing the designs that he made for the costumes for the various operas. And what is phenomenal is that the costumes survive, that they didn't get chucked out in the trash in the 1930s and 1940s when these operas were happening. So you could walk around the show and see the design and see what the actual costume looked like. They had, I think, 5 or 6 of his operas included. I decided to also go to the other Getty, which is called the Getty Villa. The Getty Villa is where J. Paul Getty built his first house, and this is where he stuffed all his antiquities collection. So all his Greek and Roman statues were placed here. It's a beautiful place filled with murals. One of the things I saw there was a mosaic show, and this is one mosaic from the Roman time period. Here's a detail for you. I had just weeks before seeing the show started to learn to make mosaics. So one of the most important things I think I did on my sabbatical was I learned something new, one of my new adventures, which was not on my to-do list. I did not know I was going to learn how to make mosaics, but a friend of mine is a mosaicist. She had lived in Ravenna, Italy, and Ravenna is where mosaic is really an art. It still is, and so she was trained in Italy by masters who know the ancient techniques. She did not train me in the ancient techniques. I do a more modern technique. But basically this implies going to the Salvation Army, buying a plate. The goal is to buy a plate for $1 or less. Because you break up that plate, you chip it apart, and you start making things. So I made a pot. This is my pot ungrouted. And you can see the word first there. I found the word first, and I was like, hey, it's my first pot. So I started mosaicing, and I love it. I think it's phenomenal. I think it's a great expression for me, and it is really tied to my teaching. I teach a lot of mosaic work. So I've really come to understand in a new way, as you only can, by making, learning by making. I'm an overachiever. I admit it. And I started my first pot here, and my second mosaic project, I went to the other extreme. I did an installation project. My father said, oh, you're learning how to mosaic. Do you want to do something for the yard? I said, okay, what would you like me to do? And he said, well, we have this little concrete strip. Why don't you do something with it? So I went down to the Mexican border. I went to their junk pile of tiles and bought a bunch of broken tiles. And I started making a mosaic with my friend. And we made a little strip. Here we are kind of laying out the pieces, trying to decide how we should arrange them. This is before we finalize things, and this is the end result. And that is a picture of our dog who we lost in April. This is Simone, our great lab. Detail for you, absolutely phenomenal. I've become a total crazy mosaicist. I just went mosaic crazy, so be careful. Soon my office is going to be covered in mosaic. I based all the colors on this pot. This is my father's pot, and I am keeping my eye on the clock. This is just quickly, some pictures. I also mosaicked a clock. Found it for $3.99 at the Salvation Army. Look it, turned out really good. I made a trivet to put hot things on. That's ungrouted versus grouted. I decided to do a black grout. So mosaicing was one of the top things I did during my trip. I'm looking at the clock, and I could just show you so much. I'm going to skip over my Hotel Del Coronado. It's a famous place in San Diego. It's where you go when you want there to be winter, and there's not. And so this is in December in San Diego, where they have an ice rink, and so you act like it's winter when it's really not, because it's 75 degrees outside. But my father and I went for my birthday. I'm on December 20th is my birthday, and every year we go to look at the Christmas tree. And this year they inverted the Christmas tree. I loved it. Phenomenal idea. What did my dad do with me? He took me to Victorian high tea. Great thing for a daddy to do with his daughter. We lived it up. That is my plate of little miniature sandwiches. The dessert came. I know it's all about food, isn't it? Instead of a birthday cake, this is what I had. Absolutely phenomenal. So great. So 2018 came, and new year and new beginnings. One of the first things I did was I went to Borrego Springs. It's a desert community east of San Diego. They're trapped in the 1950s. Beautiful, really, they are trapped in the 1950s. It's not Palm Springs. It's very rustic. Around the corner, you find 1950s restaurants. It's not touristy at all. Very few tourists go there. This is my partner, Brad. We went on a life-changing hike that day, and some of you know where I'm headed. We went on a hike in what is called a slot canyon. These are canyons that have been washed out by water, and we went on this hike. He was ahead of me in this picture, and the slot canyon goes through times when it's very narrow, the light shafts come down. Absolutely phenomenal. Things get very, very narrow at times. So at one point in the process, he got ahead of me. I came around the corner and I just was on my hike, and he stopped me and he said, "Hey, what is that?" And I looked and I thought, "That's a jewelry box." And he goes, "Yeah." So he proposed, and so we got engaged, and really phenomenal moment. Thank you, thank you. And we hadn't seen anyone on this hike. What was so phenomenal is we didn't see a single person on this hike all day. And literally 5 minutes after he proposed, this couple walked around the corner. And this is Tom and Stacy. They've been invited to the wedding. I saw them, I said, "He just proposed," and I was crying, and they started crying, and Tom was like, "Oh, I remember when I proposed to Stacy," and we talked, and it turns out he is an illustrator. I mean, out of all the people I could possibly meet, I meet an illustrator who designed the medieval gargoyles for the local brewery in San Diego. They have a brewery in Napa and other places too. So Tom is, and he's also a mystery writer. So we met Tom and his family. So yes, we invited them. The engaged couple were very happy, but totally life-changing. This is Carly's. This is like the 1950s dive that you go to when you're in Borrego Springs. We kept the news to ourselves for about 5 hours, which was so fun. I did make the announcement on Instagram with my Bitmoji. Ripple started in Alfred. We were joking like, "Oh, the news is hitting Alfred." I started getting texts from people. It was a great day. So we had a great experience. We kept encountering these bighorn sheep is what you encounter when you basically go to Borrego Springs. I'll end on this, the lunar eclipse. I have more slides. I have slides of me in Paris and all types of stuff, but of course, time goes by faster than you can possibly imagine when you're giving a talk about your life. We then experienced the total lunar eclipse. So again, the year of the eclipses, this is on January 31st. I woke up at it was 4:51. I think I woke up at 4:40. I dragged the dog outside. We set up shop and saw the lunar eclipse. And it was absolutely phenomenal. I want to just end on one thing. You know, sabbatical, isn't this about academic work too? This is proof that I worked. This is me reading. But I put up for you what I did do. I'm working on a book. I was approached. This is so rare in academia. I did not go to a publisher came to me. So the University of Amsterdam Press, or Amsterdam University Press, approached me in Wisconsin and asked if I would be interested in publishing my book with them. So I have a preliminary contract with Amsterdam University Press to publish my book on textiles at the Papal Court in Avignon. I have started a new project. It's called a Festschrift. A Festschrift is a fancy German word, what we use to dedicate a group of essays to somebody. And so I've launched a Festschrift project from my PhD advisor, who you see here. This is Alison Stones. I asked her when I saw her in France if she would be okay if I did a Festschrift in her honor. She started to cry. I started to cry. She is thrilled that I'm doing a Festschrift. It will be a multi-year project. I've asked 2 of my colleagues from grad school to join me in the project. I am working on an article. I am almost done. Literally, I just have a little bit of finishing touches to do, and I completed a book review. So I did work. What I'm going to do, I just wanted to show you, I wanted to show you one last picture. These are pictures of Paris. I don't have time to tell you all about them. I looked at art. I worked at the library. This is the art history library, filled with students who knew that the art history library would literally be filled. If you didn't get there in time, you didn't get a seat. But what I'm trying to do is advance through the slides. I found my book. I was very excited to find my book in the great art history library. I spent time in what is called manuscripts. This is the manuscript area. This is one of the manuscripts I looked at. You can see, not easy to read. I was looking for a special book. I actually didn't find it. That's part of research woes. You spend hours and hours and you don't find what you want. Disappointment. I spent time at this library in Paris. This is the great BNF, Bibliothèque Nationale de France. Huge, huge space. Again, also filled all the time. You never go with an empty seat. I gave a talk at the American University of Paris. You can see I really over-planned things. I did an anti-Semitic march. This woman at 85 years old was murdered when I was in Paris. She was stabbed to death and her body was set on fire. And so a group of people, young people, decided to hold a marche blanche, a silent march. I don't like crowds at all, but I decided to march. I felt so outraged by what happened to this Jewish woman. I'm wearing a sticker that says, in France, we kill grandmothers because they're Jewish. So I did do an anti-Semitic march, which was a great experience. Spent more time in Paris. Of course I ate. And I drank hot chocolate. I took a cooking class and I learned how to make a bunch of sauces. Phenomenal. One day I'll try to share my sauces with you. And I leave you on this little postscript. Many of you know, we have a new member in our family, and this is Maisie. Our dog, Simone, died of cancer in April, and I show you our little black lab. I got her 5 weeks ago. This is how she looked 5 weeks ago. That's how she looked about 4 weeks ago. This is how she looked 2 weeks ago, and this is how she looks now. She's on mega speed growing, so come visit me in my office. Maisie's an approved dog on campus. She's the official Harder Hall dog now. So that is my talk. Thank you so much for coming to my lecture. I think we have about 3 minutes. So does anyone have a quick question? One question? One pressing question? I know, it's kind of like, what do you want to ask? Yes?
What do you think about when you're swimming?
What do I think about when I'm swimming? I think I'm simultaneously cursing at myself how hard it is. I am noticing how beautiful the shadows are in the water, and I am often, I think, counting. I'm counting my laps, I'm counting my stroke, I'm counting how many times I'm breathing. I was doing a lot of drill work, so I was actually doing a lot of math. Great question, Emrys.
I ask because I find it very boring.
It is boring. It is boring. It's hard. It's really hard. Swimming is hard. It's not an entertaining thing. Someone gave me some ideas about some sound that you can attach to your brain and listen to sound if you want music, but I like the silence. I do like the silence. It's boring, but it's good. So thanks for that question. Okay, I'm going to let you go because it's 1 o'clock. I have to go teach now. Thanks, everybody.